Hello, you're listening to Goddess of Queens Presents A New Voice in Music, a monthly show where we explore conversations around music, culture, and what we can do to make life more inclusive. We are a community who has built a platform which focuses on music and education to bring people together. Subscribe now to be a part of something that we can all believe in, and follow us at Goddess of Queens Music for more. In this episode, we are joined by Liam Osbourne and Nina Kong, and we have a conversation about intersectionality and privilege. Thank you for joining today. We have two great guests, Liam Osbourne and Nina Kong, and today we're going to talk about intersectionality and privilege. I brought them here together to listen and learn about their life stories, and we hope to share some nuggets of wisdom for you to take away and marinate on, and maybe even add them to your daily life. I'm so happy to have you both on the show. I would love to have a discussion with you today about growth mindsets and how we as individuals can make small changes to our lives that make big changes around the world. We want to bring everyone together to understand that we all have our own perspectives, experiences, and the way that we view the world. And yet, underneath, we all want the same thing: love, compassion, kindness. So why is it so hard sometimes for us to receive it or give it? Firstly, tell us a bit about yourselves, where you're based, and why you wanted to talk about intersectionality and privilege.
Hi, I'm Liam. I'm a Black gay male originally from the Caribbean island of Barbados. I grew up in the Caribbean before going to Canada for university and then the Netherlands for further education. I now live in London and spend time in Amsterdam. I work in the creative industries, specifically in fashion advertising, and I wanted to talk about intersectionality and privilege because I feel there are a large audience of people who wish they could work in the creative industries, but feel that they may not fit in or be enough. And I want them to think bigger for themselves. I want them to feel that they are enough, and I want them to act without fear. So hopefully hearing a little bit about my story can help them feel those things.
I'm so excited to talk to you about this, as I stumbled into the creative industry and I didn't know that that was a place that I could be. Even though I'm from the UK, I've been very lucky to fall into that place in Amsterdam. So I would love to hear more about it, because actually that's how we met Liam, through the advertising and creative industry.
I'm still reeling from Liam's reason for wanting to talk about intersectionality and privilege. I'd be honored if I could also somehow make that kind of impact. I'm a little bit early on in my intersectionality and privilege journey, and I say that because my whole life I've been the racial majority. I grew up in Hong Kong, Shanghai. My accent is very deceptive. I do hold an American passport, but I have not lived in the States as an adult, nor do I ever plan to. So I've just moved to London, I want to say 6 months ago, less than 6 months ago. And it's humbling and also very jarring and sometimes very upsetting how much I feel like myself here. Because in Shanghai, I had to wrestle with the whole thing of I'm Chinese, I look Chinese, I speak fluent Chinese, but I'm not actually Chinese. You know, that double barreled way of qualifying your actual right to be considered from a certain place. So now that I'm in London, I'm wrestling with a whole different mentality and a whole different identity, where I am Chinese, but I'm also American, but I'm also married to a British person, but I'm also none of those things and all of those things at the same time. So I'm still trying to figure out what intersectionality means for me, and also understanding what my own privilege has been and identifying what people around me who might be struggling with that and having the language to be able to talk to them about those things. And I also came out as bisexual last year. So that's also like another, when I say I'm early on in this journey, I feel like this is such a great forum for me to to learn from the both of you and to also share what my experiences have been.
Thank you for sharing. I'm of mixed heritage, and I often say that I'm British, but I also went on a journey to discover myself and my mother's heritage. Growing up in a predominantly white neighborhood in the UK and working in a space where it was predominantly white, at first I didn't know my own identity. So intersectionality for me was really important to learn, and I'm glad we're having these conversations now, especially these discussions with DEI, diversity, equity, and inclusion, and how that shaped our individual experiences, be that as a woman, as a Black woman, a woman of colour, being queer, and what does it all actually mean? Actually, let's take it back a bit, as I wonder if people know what we mean when we say intersectionality. How would you describe it?
I think I used this language earlier on, where you feel like you have very prescriptive definitions of different segments of yourself. For example, your ethnicity, your sexual orientation, just maybe even different milestones in your life that then add more segments. And you are all of those things, and you are the culmination of all of those things, but then you are also none of those things at the same time. And it feels like, how do I talk about myself without having to, how do I share my experiences in a way where I am the sum of everything that's ever happened to me? And even more importantly, I'm the culmination of what I do with those things when I see other people who don't have such privilege as I do, yet we share so many of the same segments. And how can I be part of their journey and make things probably, hopefully, a little bit less shitty? Also, can we swear? Okay, a little less shitty.
Yes. Liam, how does it work for you?
To make it work in my brain, I try to think of intersectionality as being like a set of keys that we all have, and each key is a different part of our identity. And what we choose to do with those keys, it says a lot about where we are in terms of different communities and what we do with privilege. Let's say I have the key to education. I can use that key to open the door to educate others, to mentor others, but sometimes I may not want to open the door to people who are not as educated as I am, which means then that I am being discriminatory. So I use this key door analogy to show how you can hold a set of keys and still be discriminatory, even if you're a member of a certain group. This helps me realize how I can, with each aspect of my identity, what I can do differently or what I can start doing to help other people.
Both of you have raised questions in my head because my identity when I was younger was I was just Maxine Penny. I didn't know that intersectionality also allowed me to have privilege. I'm of mixed heritage and my skin tone is very light, and I had no idea about colorism until later on in my journey. For those who don't know what colorism is prejudice or discrimination against individuals with a dark skin tone, typically among people of the same ethnic or racial group. I was also told during my career that my name doesn't sound foreign, and I've often got more job opportunities due to this over someone that is considered darker than me or from a different country. I used to work in recruitment, and I know the unconscious bias causes people to look at CVs and judge people on name, age, location, and education, like you said, Liam. And so for me, it wasn't until I went through my unconscious bias training, which was over 12 years now, that I found bias towards people from my own race, which completely shocked me. And it started me on this journey of self-awareness to discover how I could be better and check my own privilege. Sometimes people think that privilege is a dirty word. However, it's not a blame game. It's about recognizing that we have different experiences and bias, which is influenced by our background, personal experiences, societal stereotypes, and cultural contexts. And it's not just about gender, ethnicity, or other visible diversity characteristics. It could also be about height, body weight, names, and many other things can also trigger unconscious bias. So it's really important to know where we are triggered and how we can change it. Nina, how would you describe intersectionality?
Okay, the first thing, Liam, I really appreciate the keys analogy And it's also helped me visualize something that I'm starting to trying to wrap my head around. So thank you for that. What came to mind was when you said that the key holder or the key master can have many keys and still also be complicit in discrimination. Reminded me of this time when I was working in Shanghai in the creative industry where I still am, but it was with a company that was very, very male dominated and a very particular type of personality and energy that was modeled after the so-called alpha male. This is something we all know very well. And I started noticing how women were competing with one another and succeeding by only putting other women down because there were only so many seats at the table. So it just invoked this idea of like these women had the key of access with them to this potential amazing career. But instead of using their key to open the door for other women, whether they were mentoring them or whether they were peers, they decided to put that key in their own pocket because of the construct of how many doors were available. And I wonder if a lot of our hesitancy sometimes to take out those keys for other people is because of the structure where we're made to believe that doors are finite.
I feel that the interesting thing with intersectionality or holding those keys comes from a degree of privilege. And with privilege, you are able to exert power. And by understanding that you have that privilege also means that you have the power to extend it to others. However, there are certain environments, situations, and organizations where you've been, where you think, do I want to share that power? Do I want to allow access to others? How is this going to allow my own selfish journey through this structure? So it can be very confronting.
I'd like to add to that. It's not always about power for me. I question if that place is safe, or are you in a position or company or structure that supports people like you? It's not that you don't want people to come in. You question if it's the right place for people to come in. Maybe you're not in the right place, or you don't understand your own power or privilege, which is the journey you need to go on and educate yourself on and ask, what is it I can do to be accessible to others or to educate myself?
That's interesting that you're coming in from like a protector angle. That's so Max. That's so you. Now that you've articulated that, it's very on brand for you.
Right? Thanks, Nina. This actually takes us on to the next section, an exercise, which is about finding your life purpose. I have a little exercise for everyone. People at home, you can do it too. And if you want, you can pause it here so you can grab a piece of paper and write down these 5 things. And then at the end, you're going to reveal what you said. And whilst you do it, I'll explain why I chose this exercise to share with you today. And it should take about 5 minutes. So everyone at home, you can do it too. Write down, what is your name? What do you love to do? That could be write, talk, teach, design. What is the one thing you feel supremely qualified to teach other people? Who do you do it for? You can picture them in your mind. You don't have to say it out loud. And what do these people want or need? Why do they come to you? What do they need from you? And the last one, how do they change as a result of what you've given them? Now, I didn't make this up. This is a TED Talk by Adam Leipzig. And when I saw it, it changed my life. I've always associated my life purpose with work, and I never really knew what I wanted to do. I've tried many things, which I'm super proud that I did, some out of naivety and some out of months, years of thinking about what I want to do and who I want to be. And when I did this exercise, I discovered that I love to bring people together, which to people who know me shouldn't be a shock. I love to help people feel understood, and people often come to me to connect to other people. I have a really large network, and it brings me joy to get everyone together, whether it's for work or personally. So when you did this exercise, what did you discover? Do you know your life's purpose now?
I found this exercise quite challenging, and I did watch the TED Talk before I had my mini brainstorm on it. I immediately went to work and thought about work features and work characteristics, and it pushed me to think beyond that and about me as an individual, where I landed for the question of, what do you love or like to do, it centers around empathizing with people and bringing peace and harmony into the world. That's what I love doing.
I love that. It's interesting to know that yours was also attached to work, Liam. I don't know if that's down to the way we were raised, culture of society, or something else. To be successful seems to have always been linked with work. However, I think you can be successful in your personal life too, whether you like baking for others, bringing people together, doing charity work, or being an artist. There are so many things we can be successful in. I read this book called What Color is Your Parachute? As I never knew what I wanted to do professionally, and I was switching careers at the time. I believe that I didn't have any concrete skills, and this book helps you work out what your skills are. I didn't connect that my soft skills like networking, bringing people together, being positive, trying new things were actually my hard skills, and that they were super important for me as a person and my career. That's why these conversations are so important to me, and a huge part of what I'm doing now is bringing people together through music. Nina, I'd love to know more about your life purpose.
My mind went to work as well. And originally, hearing you say that, I was thinking, ooh, would I bristle if that happened to me? But then I thought, no, because I think speaking of privilege, the fact that I get to do what I love at work every single day and iterate different versions of it every day, that's an absolute privilege. And the fact that I'm able to shape and make decisions on my behalf for my career and not have that lie in somebody else's hands is absolutely a privilege. So I think for me, I feel very happy that my mind went to work. And I think that getting stressed out at work and showing that stress and how seriously you were taking something and how emotionally you were vested at work was glamorized. And then certain things have happened in my life that just showed me that the absolute worst things happened to me and I've survived them. And being rattled is not something to glamorize, because you're spiking your own cortisol, and also you're setting an example for people around you that it's okay to be completely out of your depth and to lose control of your emotions. And it's not a good place to be in. It's not a healthy place to be in. So something that I pride myself in now is I don't get rattled when things are chaotic, especially at work. Liam, I'm in the same industry as you. Every day there's a fire to fight, right? Every day there's a crisis. And I think when I'm in the room, I bring a certain sense of not exactly calmness, but I think emotional rigor is the words that come to mind, because it's not about downplaying the importance of something. And it's also not overplaying the urgency of something. It's understanding what the situation is objectively, what's the appropriate reaction, what's the right amount of emotion to give and to take, and then act according to that. So I saw something that really shaped this for me, which was the actual definition of mental health, which is totally against the misconception that so-called good mental health means you're always in a positive place. But that's actually incorrect. Good mental health is being able to understand the situation you're in, assess it, name the emotion, put language to it, and then identify the appropriate reaction to it. And that could be bursting into tears and not being able to stop crying for a week. That's okay too, because that's the appropriate reaction to that situation once if that is the appropriate reaction. So I apply that rigor to crises. And I think I'm very good in crises. I think people find me very reassuring and comforting. And I just don't add fuel to the fire, which is something that people do a lot once, especially if you're in a room full of people panicking and it's glamorized. So that's the first thing I think to add. I haven't exactly branded it yet in a headline, but it's around emotional rigor, being good in crises, or adding emotional rigor to crises And if you figure it out, Maxine, through editing, please let me know, and then I can put it on my LinkedIn.
I was just thinking it's good that you shared this. I used to live in that toxic positivity. I don't know if it's age, era, or the climate, and if the workplace is changing, but I never used to show my emotions at work. You kind of just got on with it, and I definitely wore a mask. And now I think regulating your emotions and saying to yourself, it's okay not to be perfect, it's okay to not know everything, is a huge strength. I used to sit in meetings a long time ago, and I was so curious about why everyone was so excited in these meetings. However, now I know that I wasn't in the right space for me, and that the universe or your body will redirect you to where you need to be. And once you're there, then you get an influx of the right energy in the right environment. Nina, what did you want to share with us?
I think you added a lot of context also, because it is about speaking again, coming back to privilege. Like everything has to work together for you to thrive, right? It doesn't matter how much work you put into a place. If there are certain systemic issues and obstacles there, there's always going to be a way to put you on the back of the list for sure. And then if you're in a super meritocratic place, there's poison everywhere, and there's also opportunities elsewhere. So absolutely agreed that it is the right environment. And I think now having this new job in London, I go to work every day, and I do feel like I feel extremely grateful that I have found the right place, especially in this climate. The second thing that I wanted to say was, you said your soft skills are also the most important skills that you've built, and I wonder even if we can think about and reconsider language like hard skills and soft skills, because it does perpetuate that like very meritocratic idea of like
Hierarchy.
Exactly. Because I would say like your skills are so transferable. You could go anywhere, the right environment, and thrive, because you would be able to adapt, you'd be able to shape and communicate and advocate for yourself, and importantly, rally the right people around you to get you to that position that you need to be in to thrive. I would feel honored if we ended up in the same company together.
I mean, I am quite distracting in the office, which is why I had such a great time during COVID, being on my own and being very productive.
I mean, also, it could go either way. We would be extremely amazing, or we would just get no work done because we would just be rolling around the floor laughing our tits off. I actually wanted to just echo that and say, I think also another thing I love to do is to enable somebody else to communicate or to share what they're trying to say. So having the patience to talk somebody through an idea. So for context, a lot of what I do at work is speaking to creatives, a lot of the time junior creatives, and helping them shape and articulate an idea. So part of that is just not saying anything instead of jumping in and trying to be like, oh, are you trying to say this? Are you trying to say that? Is just to be quiet, listen to them, and then kind of like take what they're saying and almost take a step to the side and look around the corner of that idea or that tactic or that execution that they're talking about, and then pull out that thought and then watch their eyes light up as you are then coaching them through articulating that really exciting inspiration and putting the language around that, and walking away feeling extremely energized and fulfilled, and knowing that the next time they're having a conversation with their peers, they're going to be able to help each other communicate in a much more fulfilling way. So I love doing that. And again, super lucky that I get to do that.
I love that leadership skill. And that's what they are, these soft skills. Or like you said, language is so important. And with my background in recruitment, I would like hiring managers or companies to stop using words in your job post like, we need a rock star or hit the ground running, because it doesn't incite a culture ad or people to work there. It sounds very isolating when what we need is supportiveness. We need active listening to bring people's ideas to life. And if we can all have that respect and time and space for each other, then we'd get a lot more done, achieve a lot more, and motivate everyone. And like you said, walk away energized. One of my soft skills, is positivity, bringing things to the table and being like, we can do this. I used to think that I wasn't realistic, but I like to achieve things and I am a problem solver in times of crisis. And I really like to forge connections and work as a team to bring things forward. We're really dipping into this conversation. I would love to hear more about your respective journeys, as now we're kind of talking about the end product. Liam, did you want to add anything?
Just on the point of problem solving, coming back to what do I like or love to do, and coming back to what I think I'm good at, which is empathizing with people, I've been successful within my role as business partner, commercial partner, client liaison, because I've always listened to people and been able to put myself in their shoes and completely dismantled this adversarial them, us, client, agency, creative versus accounts dichotomy, and view things very holistically and understand that they're human beings, they have pressures, they have different points of view, and they have their own intersectionality that is forming their opinions. So let me dig in, listen, understand, and then come up with a potential solution, but being humble enough to know that my solution is not the only one, and it can come from many different people on my team who might come up with an incredibly good solution. So I feel that when it comes to being a listener and having empathy to rejig the soft skills, hard skills, those are the hardest, most valuable skills to have in my professional arsenal.
That's amazing. I mean, bad management is the number one reason why people leave their job. I think if we change that construct, going back to education and self-awareness, and listening to both of you say it's about everyone, it's about bringing everyone together, listening, sparring off each other, I think that would be a much more amazing environment to work in. That's why I wanted to hear about your journeys. How did you pick your career, and did you experience any obstacles on the way? And if you did, how did you manage them? And what journey did you take to get to where you are today?
Just before that, can I react to what Liam just said? Because I absolutely adore what you said. And I would add that I think something that I've also noticed about you, working with you and just being in your orbit, is that you can empathize with people even when you're not part of that situation or when you're not in the room with them. You can imagine what life is like when you've left the room or before you've entered it. And that's next level empathy, because you've not even not centered yourself, but you're not even in the peripheral. So that takes a lot of muscle, and empathy is a muscle, as we know, right? It's not something you're born with or you're not born with. And when people say like, oh, some people are just born empaths, it's like, no, other people just put more work in. So it feels like that's a huge skill that you work tirelessly at, to imagine what life is like when you're not even in the room, so that when you do enter the room, that interaction is more fulfilling for the both of you, or for all of you. Right. Ooh, journeys. Okay, so I guess my journey, I'll have to start with my mother. So she and my dad immigrated to the US in the 80s from Beijing, China. And she did her master's in the US, and then she started her career she essentially started her career at GE Capital as a Chinese woman in the 80s. So, you can picture that. And she very quickly became hugely successful, and she was the head of M&A for GE Plastics for APAC. So her definition of success, which I subscribed to as a child and which I was raised with, was this idea that there's a certain mold, there's a certain structure, and you have to follow certain structures, but there are hacks you can do to surpass certain obstacles and get noticed. So I remember very clearly this one hack she gave me was, people aren't going to remember your name, Nina Kong, so you're going to have to put it in huge pink letters in capitals as part of your signature. When I think about that tip now, I think about the precedent of where that came from was, nobody is going to notice your name or remember your name, Kong, so do this. So in retrospect, I'm seeing all of these things that very much she and I are, finally, I'm sharing the experience that my mother had when she was in her 30s, which is living as a woman of color in a predominantly white environment, but the difference is I'm in a very different career path and not extremely, like, almost the opposite of the corporate environment she was in. So my journey has been trying to get as far away as possible as from what her journey was. So it was incremental. I started at Ogilvy, which arguably is like the closest thing to a corporate creative environment. And I very quickly realized that that wasn't the place for me. I needed somewhere with much more independent, subversive thinking and action. And then slowly but surely, through the independent agencies, the smaller, hot shops, and now I'm at a place where it's very much all about trying to figure out how to contribute and be essentially late stage capitalism, but subverted at the same time, which is my brand. So that's exactly. I think my journey has very much been shaped around getting away from something because I don't know exactly what it is that is the perfect place or the perfect purpose for me. But as I'm experiencing it, as I'm seeing it, I recognize it faster and I can find ways to get to that place and get away from the other place much more efficiently. And I guess that's how I'm also qualifying my growth. How long it takes me to identify something that's good for me and how long it takes me to remove myself and then find a new place to be in.
I want to say so many things, but Liam, you go.
So I guess I'll go far back, as Nina also kindly shared with us, into who her family is and helped shape who she is. As I said, I'm originally from the Caribbean, growing up gay in that region. Fashion and fashion magazines very much offered me a lot of inspiration and showed me a portal to a world that I didn't see around me, but I knew existed. On some deep level, I knew I wanted to be part of that community. I wanted to work with those people. I wanted to live in those cities. I wanted to live that life. But I had no idea how to get there as a kid in the Caribbean. I knew I had skill in academia, and I saw that as a way out. So I studied and did very well in school and thought, okay, I want to be the next Kofi Annan and the UN doing some good. I can do something in that field, so let me study political science, international relations, and diplomacy, which I don't regret doing since I learned incredible life skills and transferable skills, which I use in my career now. And I couldn't imagine working in my current role without diplomacy as a core tenet. But I've reached a point in my career where I was doing advertising for big brands and multinational corporations, but I wasn't in love with the brands that I was working with. And when we had the opportunity with my partner to move to London, I had that Oprah aha moment where I said, I've built a career in advertising. I've always loved fashion. So why don't I be very strategic and fulfill my dreams to work in fashion and bring it all together? So the move to London allowed that for me to happen. And while being here, I've had an incredibly lucky run at working with agencies and publications that serve fashion dreams to audiences. We do amazing things within the industry. And I would tell people that your career path is not meant to be linear. If anything, the flaws or flops or mistakes on the journey that you take makes you a far more interesting person rather than being trained and having a singular trajectory in one direction. For me, that's not an interesting person or someone that I would look to hire. Those CVs are boring, and I much rather have looking at CVs of people who've had a startup that failed or took a year off to go traveling. Whatever the journey of life has taken them, I know it's made them a more interesting, stronger person.
Now I know why you're so diplomatic and fantastic in negotiations, Liam. I've seen you at work and it's impressive. Like I said, I never really knew what I wanted to do. Where I grew up, there were only a few options, which were you could be a hairdresser or an assistant, although there's nothing wrong with those careers. It's just that I wanted to study art. However, my parents said that I wouldn't make any money. Again, that bias about being a creative. So I went to study business, and actually it created independence or survival, whichever way you look at it. Those transferable skills allow me to live in Crete, Greece, and then London, and now Amsterdam. And I had the opportunity and privilege of having a good education and the culture to work hard. When I started work, you had to be somewhere for 5 years, otherwise it looked like you weren't committed. And I've often freelanced and been able to hop around into different environments and companies. And now I'm using those skills to learn more about music, and I'm really grateful to be able to do that. I'm not saying it's easy, but these experiences have given me the direction, like Nina said, to check if I'm in the right place and environment for me and learn something new.
I'd like to add on to what Liam said. I think, especially from our generation, I'm assuming we're all millennials. I mean, we all have the same physical reaction to Flo Rida, so yes, we are millennials. From our generation, it feels like we were taught to think that success looked certain ways, but there were always absolutes in it. If you were a doctor, then you were analytical. Or if you were an artist, then you're not business minded. It was so binary. And to your point, Liam, now when I'm looking and I'm speaking to candidates, if I actually see like a very linear growth trajectory with very similar skill sets, but just done for much longer times, it makes me question how many multitudes this person has and how many perspectives they can bring to situations. And I think when somebody subscribes to that narrative of absolutes, they've either mastered compartmentalizing their work life and their work self and their work identity with, who they are as people, or they've just subscribed to this idea that you can't put those things together and everything is black and white, binary, absolute. Many truths cannot exist at once. And I think I would love the opportunity at some point where, speaking of the reason why you're on this podcast, Liam, was to help other people also unlearn that the path to having a fulfilling career should be a path that embraces your intersectionalities and your multitudes, instead of requiring you to close the door on a few and only put a couple others up on stage.
It's so interesting that we lived in the binary and now there is a change in the system, which I think is really important.
I feel like for us, it's a recognition of what came before us. It was very one way, very singular, and we're the first true broad generation. We're a huge cohort that looks different, thinks differently, acts differently. And as we go up the ladder, we have the ability to make huge transformational change in the industries and companies that we work in. And I'm excited to see what that looks like as we get older and still dance to Beyoncé in the retirement home.
Hopefully together. I love that you're putting intersectionality into practice in the processes that you use and in your daily life. I mean, you want to see that individuality, you want to see that intersectionality, and I think that's really important. Remember back in the day when you had to put your hobbies on your CV? Everyone used to put things like reading, dancing, cooking, whatever. It was so funny, but it really showed or pretended to show who you were. I mean, what would you put as your hobbies on your CV now?
TikTok, attempted baking, and amateur florist.
Dog rescuer. When I was in Shanghai and I had access to amazing tailors, I dabbled in fashion design a little bit. Would love to go back to that if I can find a trusted tailor here. So amateur fashion designer, we'll put it like that. And the third one I would say probably would be something around eating. Yeah, I was going to say cooking, but that would be a blatant lie. If somebody can put reading, I'm going to put eating.
As this podcast is about bringing people together through music, I have a few music questions for you. In what ways has music impacted your life?
I would say, for whatever reason, Whitney Houston has been my spirit diva since I was a child. Her voice is so captivating, and I love the way that her songs make me feel. And I knew from a small age that I Want to Dance with Somebody would play at my wedding. And I'm very happy that I was able to get married 2 years ago. And the final song on the dance floor at my wedding was I Want to Dance with Somebody. So I can listen to that song at any moment, and it puts me in the best mood ever.
I'm gonna take you on a bit of a journey here, detouring away from Whitney. I think the album that changed my relationship with music, or really started it actually, was Nine Inch Nails with Teeth. I was a teenager, and I still love anything Trent Reznor does and touches to this day. And I still go back to that album and the other Nine Inch Nail albums because it made me realize it put sound and frequencies and vibrations to this emotion that I couldn't quite name and understand when I was 15, which was rage. There was this like humming, brimming sense of rage, which I still feel every day. And when I talk to people about what our default emotions are, which is one of my favorite questions to ask people, and you hear things like optimism, fear, positivity, happiness, even very rarely, but sometimes I get a couple of those. Mine is always rage. And it's not that kind of violent, angry rage. It's just that brimming sense of, it could be injustice, it could be frustration, it could be pain. Actually, it very much is pain. So Nine Inch Nails gave me that soundtrack to my rage, and especially that like special brand of teenage rage and teenage angst. And to that day, I still feel like that's a very valid part of myself, and I think that also is something that I return to when I'm alone, and I think it's healthy because it makes me confront reality, and it makes me confront what's happening in the world right now. And if we don't feel a little bit angry and hopeless and full of rage, maybe we're not connecting and we're not putting the work in to connect.
Wow, what a journey you've just taken us on. It reminds me of when I was a very emo, sad teenager. I grew up in a skater town and everyone listened to Nine Inch Nails, Korn, Deftones. And I used to listen to all of that. And, sometimes I would listen to Radiohead and weep. I also like that raw political music like Skunk Anansie, who is one of my favorite bands, who I saw at Glastonbury actually. And Skin is an amazing artist.
I just remembered that my email address when I was from the ages of 14 to 19 was rageagainstthepenis@hotmail.com.
Oh my God. Actually, mine used to be You're Sweet Like Chocolate Boy. I'm not going to sing. Now, everyone knows how old I am. I will just say it's my intersectionality between emo and pop music. I love to switch it up. Actually, if you could have a jam session with anyone living or dead, who would it be and why?
Rihanna. We're both from Barbados. She's going to have the best food in the studio. We'll probably go on to the beach afterwards. So yes, she'd be my choice.
Rihanna. Oh, you heard it here first. Next on the podcast. Nina, what about you?
I would be interested in being in a room with Aphex Twin because I discovered him through the eyes of my husband, who is a bit older than us, and his basically Aphex Twin. He still is, but at that time he was the pioneer of electronic music. And I discovered him through the eyes of my husband, who just started going back to school for music production. So he's like learning how to master, how to mix, how to sample those things. And he, like his Instagram algorithm is like all just synths and just like incredibly gorgeous, nerdy content. And it brings him so much joy. And I'm discovering a lot of these artists through him. And Aphex Twin seems to have had such a massive, if not one of the most important pivotal influences on electronic music. And I would just love to be next to him and just see how his brain works. And also, he's an amazing visual artist. So that would be incredibly inspiring, I think.
Yes, I love Aphex Twin. Actually, this takes me on to the next question. Is there a film or music video that you think people should watch or has made an impact on you?
I watch it once a week and I can't remember the name. Hello, ADHD. Oh, it's Tous les Mêmes by Stromae. It's where he's half in like a white tank top and he's like this kind of like broy, and then the other side is this like beautifully coiffed, more feminine side of him in like a beautiful tailored jacket. And he just like he switches between the two in the same room, and he like walks around and treats. You see like how the masculine side of him treats the feminine side and vice versa. And it's so binary, but yet so not at the same time. And I also love him. I think he's just such a visionary storyteller. And the first time I came into contact with the concept Multitudes was his album. So yeah, actually Stromae is pretty up there with Nine Inch Nails. But yeah, highly recommend that music video. It's a treat.
Yeah. Papa Tui by Stromae is also an amazing video. I think he's a great artist. Liam, you wrote it down for me, and thanks for keeping it in fashion. I love that you shared George Michael's Freedom. It's one of my favourite songs. The video is so iconic with the great Naomi Campbell, all of the supermodels of that time, Linda, Christy, Cindy, all looking incredible. You said that it's still so referenced in the industry in so many ways, from art direction to cinematography. And as you said, it's one of the best. So we've reached the quickfire round. Your top tips, you get 3 each. It can be about music or anything that's made a difference in your life. I'm going to write them down and share them, if I have your consent, of course. Here we go.
My top 3 tips. Firstly, be kind to yourself. And I've gone through a journey of being my hardest critic into where I've matured into being my biggest supporter. And I can tell you that there's much more success and fulfillment coming your way if you're kind and love yourself. It starts with you, and once that happens, the sky is the limit. Second piece of advice is invest in your network. Every single person you come into contact with in your life, the universe has brought you together, and it can be professional or personal or someone you bumped into at a museum. If you feel a connection, invest in it. If you find something that you have in common, pursue it. You never know where they're going to go or where you're going to go, and how that connection can help you or others in life. So invest in the people that come across your path. My last piece of advice, I want to bring it back to intersectionality. Your uniqueness is your superpower. Whatever makes you, you, makes you exceptional and makes you unlike everyone else. And within that brings you a huge amount of power. Own it, feel that you are enough, and apply that into your life. Bring that point of view to work. Don't be afraid to speak up something different in a room, because it can't be invalidated. It's your point of view based on your experiences. So say that and bring it to the table.
Nina, ready to share your top tips?
Yes. My first one actually segues coincidentally from Liam's third one. I absolutely agree with the idea of advocating for yourself, not justifying what you're saying, right? Not apologizing, but advocating for yourself, because you said it perfectly. You said nobody can invalidate it, nor should they, because it's a unique experience that only you understand and that you are providing. And I think advocating for that. And once you advocate or start advocating for yourself and you understand the right language to use, the mannerisms that get your message across more effectively, that's something that you can then lead by example to enable others to do for themselves. So it's a much healthier chain of influence, instead of also you putting all that pressure on yourself to not only advocate for yourself, but also for everybody in the room and everybody on your team as an example. But giving that skill to other people is so. I think if you have the honor of actually doing that, it's important. I would say one of the more important facets of mentorship or leadership. Advocate for yourself. The second one is a bit less out of the workplace, and everything has a backstory, Maxine. You're going to have fun editing this. This one comes back to my wedding 7 years ago. And our friend Beryl, I asked her to give a speech during our wedding, me and my husband's wedding, not Beryl and my wedding. I should be so lucky. She said that because my husband is 22 years older than I am, and I remember when I first met him, I was saying to Beryl that, there's so many reasons why I should be afraid. There's the inevitable moment where I probably will spend a large portion of my life without him. What about all of these things that will develop? Will I become a caretaker? All these very rational fears. And actually, a lot of those fears came from friends or family putting them into my head. And then I told her that was something I was then thinking about. But my whole mentality was, yes, I'm afraid. Yes, there's fear, but I'm going to do it anyway. And she brought that to the wedding, and she said, Nina feels the fear every day, but real love is feeling fear and then going ahead regardless, despite the fear. And that just stuck with me, and it still sticks with me. I think about that every day, and I think that notion of feel the fear and go for it anyway, or even in spite of the fear, go for it. And I think that would be my second piece of advice, because that has really shaped some of the most life-changing decisions that have benefited me and that have pushed me in the direction that I am today. So feel the fear, in spite of the fear, go for it. And I would say the third one is, this goes back to what you were saying, Liam, earlier on about empathy and putting yourself in other people's shoes. I didn't fully appreciate what other people's pain could manifest as. I didn't fully realize that it could manifest as like losing your shit at somebody who was taking a little bit longer than you at the checkout. I didn't realize that it could be small moments of microaggressions that were really not about you, but you just happened to be there at the right time, in the right place, so to speak. So after some experiences that happened to me this year, I started to understand that pain manifests in so many different ways. And to keep that in mind when somebody exhibits impatience or maybe even aggression towards you, your mind should first go into, where is that person's pain coming from? Could be very, it could be a decade-old wound. It could be something that happened this morning. But don't react to the action. Just step away, let them have that moment of release, and then that probably, hopefully, was something that helped them get through their day a little bit earlier. So I think the third piece of advice would just be, instead of reacting to the actions of other people, first question their pain. And also for yourself, when you're reacting to something badly, so to speak, or you think you're having an overreaction, question your own pain, try to isolate where it's coming from. And then you can deal with that situation with from a much healthier and a much more rational and more emotionally regulated place.
So thank you very much for sharing your innermost thoughts and experiences. And I'm sure that so many people will take away a lot of valuable insights.
Thank you so much. I've really loved this conversation.
Thank you so much again to Liam Osbourne and Nina Kong. I truly hope that you've enjoyed this episode and will join us for more. We are releasing a monthly podcast on the 25th of each month where we share our stories and insights on various topics like ableism, self-preservation, survival versus thriving, how to be a successful creative, and more. And remember, if you understand yourself, you understand the world. Subscribe now to this podcast for more insightful conversations and follow us on SoundCloud and Instagram at Goddess of Queens Music.